For that. Double my age, so it's probably a lot of time. So we're going to mix it up. We're going to do still focused on Bob's advice to the next generation, but we're going to do a little bit of a throwback on how Bob got started. We're going to learn about that, his advice on what he would change when he started, what went well when he started, and then advice to all you guys who are either just getting started or still been in the business for a while, and how you guys can try to get on his level, at least close to his level. So,
Verified! Yeah, I just want to start off by saying to Gabe and Aiden, thank you so much for organizing this, putting it together. So great. I mean, these guys are awesome. Their potential is unlimited. You know, there's a expression, the sky is the limit, and I always say in real estate, that's wrong. There is no limit in real estate. So, and these guys are proof that that's the case, and I'm sure that they're just tremendous, tremendous things ahead. So thank you very much, you and your brother, for doing this.
So the first question I wanted to ask, and probably most people, is what was it like when you first got started 42 years ago? Give us like the flashback.
Well, I think the biggest difference was that technology was non-existent. And where's Paul? Is Paul still here?
Yeah.
Paul,
So I show up first day at work, and the boss says to me, "Hey, Kankal, this kid Massey just got out of a training program. Follow him around. He'll show you where the coffee machine is." And literally, there was no technology. We had no cell phone, no computer on the desk, no fax machine. We carried rolls of quarters around in our pocket to make calls from payphones. Some of you may not even know what a payphone is. There used to be phone booths on the corner with a phone in it. And the world has just changed so much. So I think that is probably one of the biggest changes. And you know, technology, as much as it's changed over the past 42 years, I think it's going to change even to a greater degree over the next 5, because AI is changing the world so much. But yeah, starting out, it was fun stuff. And I mentioned the story to a couple of folks here tonight. I got into the real estate business completely by accident. I was a freshman at the Wharton School in 1981, wanted to be the next Gordon Gekko like every other Wharton kid. And I grew up in northern New Jersey. I drove around spring break freshman year, dropping my resume off at every investment bank and commercial bank I saw, looking for a summer job. And I came out of a Payne Wepper office in Hackensack, New Jersey. Across the hall, I see this big sign, Coldwell Banker. I was, oh great, another bank. So I go in, give them my resume, and then they called me later that day to set up an interview. I set it up for the next day. That next morning, don't forget, this is 1981, there's no internet. So I go to the library to look up this bank, and I see it's a real estate company. I'm like, oh shit, I'm not gonna go on this job. But they were the only ones hiring college kids for the summer. So I took the job, absolutely loved it, went back my next 2 summers, and then started with CB here in Manhattan when I got out of school in 1984. So actually, my first day full-time at CB was July 16th, 1984. So this is indeed my 42nd anniversary.
Obviously, we spoke a lot about tech and AI, that big changes in the last 42 years. What are things that remain the same that you would say were good and positive that still remain the same for brokers and people trying to get into
Yeah, well, the thing that is remarkably still the same is this real estate business of ours. The business is the business, I always say to people, first of all, I always say it's the greatest business in the world, which I really believe. But I also say it's a very simple business, but it's really, really hard. And by simple, I mean, let's say we were all going to go to Iceland and start a rock brokerage building. We're going to sell rocks for a living. What would we do? We'd go to Iceland, make up a list of everybody that owns rocks, then make up a list of everybody that buys rocks, then study the rock market, figure out how many different types of rocks there are, how many of each type there are, what each one's value is, and then we'd go out and try to get the people who own the rocks to hire us to sell them, get hired to sell them, and then when we get hired, call the people that buy them. That's the brokerage business in a nutshell. That has not changed. Strategies and tactics have changed because the world has changed. And I remember back in the old days when Paul and I started, you know, getting information on who owned properties was really, really hard. There was a big, thick, like it was like a phone book, but it was called the Blue Owner's Book, the Owner's Guide. that was like half accurate, half inaccurate. You'd call up people who supposedly owned the property and say, oh yeah, Mr. Jones died 30 years ago. And you didn't know who owned. We used to routinely call up the retail tenants in the buildings and say, hey, this is Joe McCluskey from the New York City Fire Department. You have fire violations. We're gonna have to shut your building down right away. I have to talk to the owner. And 90 times out of 100, they give you the owner's number and all their contact information. That's how we got a lot of the information back in those days.
Would you prefer it was like that again? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's a barrier to entry. So what has happened is that with AI and technology being so readily available, it is actually decreasing the value of information. When something is very available, it's less valuable. So I think what is becoming more valuable as information value is going down, what's becoming more valuable is judgment. And what's judgment? And the best advice I can give you is that you learn absolutely nothing from your successes, but you can learn an unbelievable amount from your failures. The best thing I've ever done in my career, and I still do it today, whenever I don't win a listing, I'll wait a couple of weeks and then I call the owner and say, hey, why did you go with somebody else? Why didn't you hire me? What could I have done differently? What could I have done better? What was my impression? And what was your impression of me? And from those opportunities, you will learn more than you can ever learn from something that goes really well. You'll learn nothing from something that goes well. And so if you keep being curious, curiosity is a great quality to have because it's going to keep you growing and keep you learning. Judgment and experience does not come from tenure in the business. You could be in the business for 30 years, but if you just went through your first year and then you weren't curious and didn't learn anything, you're just simply repeating year one 30 times in a row. But you could be in the business for 10 years or 5 years, and if you're constantly learning, you could get the experience and judgment of somebody that's been around for decades. So don't feel like, hey, I'm 22, I'm 24, I have to wait 30 years to get good judgment. You don't. Just learn as much as you can from your failures today, and you'll get up that learning curve so quickly.
Amazing. And what's the biggest mistake people made when they first started in real estate?
I think the biggest mistake people make is thinking that there's a shortcut or a hack or there's a magic potion or there's some way to circumvent the process. I think that you have to understand that it's a cumulative business. You have to keep doing things over and over and over again, provided you're doing the right things and doing those right things the right way. Eventually it will work for you and you'll be successful. But don't look for a shortcut. There is no shortcut. There's no way to circumvent it. And also ask people for advice. I always say that the thing that I regret the most is that at the beginning, Paul and I did everything by trial and error, and consequently made hundreds, if not thousands, of mistakes. Fortunately, we didn't make a lot of those mistakes twice, but later on, I think it was 06, we formed an advisory board, and we had some unbelievable people on our advisory board. We had Steve Siegel, who's the chairman of global brokerage at CBRE, a competitor, was on our advisory board. John Fowler, one of the Fs in HFF, a competitor, on our advisory board. We had 6 or 7 really, really powerful people that were on our advisory board. They helped us tremendously because they gave us the advice of someone who had been there and done that and seen a lot of things. So ask a lot of questions, learn as much as you can. You young folks that are in a new environment, I know there were some interns here tonight, you take people in your company out for lunch and, hey, how long have you been doing this? Why do you do what you do? How do you do what you do? Why do you do it that way? Learn, you should be sponges. Learn as much as you possibly can, and you'll get up the learning curve much more quickly.
For sure. Could you walk us through your first deal you ever closed?
Yeah, sure. First deal we ever closed, 1421 3rd Avenue. It was one of 2 of you can see on the big board over there, I've closed 2,416 deals now. 2 of them have been buyer rep deals, and our very first deal was a buyer rep deal. Paul and I were representing American Medical International in the first MRI clinic in New York. And it was so cool working with them because they're like, hey, we can't be too close to a subway line because the magnetic pull of this machine will get screwed up with the subway being too close. So we put the building at 1421 Third under contract. It's a 20,000 square foot vacant furniture showroom. And the morning of the closing, the seller calls up and says, he called Paul, said, Paul, I got some terrible news. The building had a fire in it last night. The first 2 floors are completely charred. And we're thinking, oh my God, this is our first deal. It's not gonna close. The buyer's not gonna want it. They're gonna wanna renegotiate. So Paul calls up this guy, Mr. McInerney, who was representing American Medical International. And we're expecting him to totally go bonkers and say, deal's off, deal's off. And the guy said, so you saved me some demolition costs. No, don't worry about it. So the deal closed, and that was the first one.
How can somebody close their first deal?
Just, you have to stick to it. You have to, I always say that the 3 characteristics that are very, very commonly prevalent in the very top people in our business are 1, passion, 2, they're able to use discipline well, and 3, expertise. So let's look at each of those, right? Passion, you have to love the business. You have to love the nuts and bolts. You have to love getting up and doing it every day. So if you want to say you want to get into real estate, there's like 9 million things you could do. Find the thing that you really love, and that makes it a lot easier to work really hard. And we always used to joke around at Massey Knackle that to be successful in this business, you only have to work half a day. Doesn't matter what 12 hours a day you work, you gotta work. Right? So find something you love, because if you don't love it, you can't work that hard. Your passion comes from 2 things. Either you love the mechanics of doing the job, or you love what success brings you. What does success bring you? A number of things. Independence, security, recognition, acknowledgement. And hopefully it's a combination of those 2 things that drive your passion for the business. But the people who do the best of this really, really love what they do. I often say I feel totally blessed, because this is not only a job for me, it's also my hobby. So my life is wonderfully simple. I have a wife and a daughter, and they're the most important things in the world to me. I try to spend as much time with them as possible. But I spend time with them, I go to the gym, I go to church, and I sell buildings. That's my life. So passion, number 1. The ability to use discipline well is really important. Notice I say use discipline as opposed to have discipline, because every human being has access to the same exact amount of discipline. We all choose to use it differently. And I love what Abraham Lincoln said about discipline, was that discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. Think about that. And we make those decisions multiple times every single day. What am I going to do? Am I going to go left? Am I going to go right? Am I going to do this or not going to do this? What do you want now versus what you want most? And if you focus on what you want most, it makes the decision-making process a little easier. But you have to use discipline to keep going and keep going. And you know, this is the Stonecutter's creed. Paul and I always used to say around the office, hey guys, you got to pound the rock today. What's pounding the rock? Well, Stonecutter comes into the shop in the morning, sits in front of a big block of stone, pulls out the mallet, and whack, 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 50, 75, 99, rock's still there. 100th blow, boom, rock splits in half. To the casual observer in the back of the room, they say, oh, that 100th blow must have been different. That 100th blow, the stonecutter must have used a different mallet, or struck the stone at a different angle, or hit it harder. But the stonecutter knows, no, that 100th blow was no different than the 99 that came before it. It was the 99 that came before it that allowed that 100th one to work. And that's when you need to use discipline, because you don't see the rock changing. The rock is changing. But what you have to come to appreciate is the reason why most people fail is because after 23 strikes, they don't see any progress. They quit. Or after 51, or 75, or 99, they quit. When the 100th one is right around the corner, you have to fall in love with the process. Because what I've come to realize is that God didn't care nearly as much about the stone as I did. God was focused on was building the stone cutter. I was focused on breaking the stone. He was focused on building the stone cutter. You have to use discipline to keep whacking away at that stone until it works for you. And the most important thing is to make sure you're doing the right things the right way. And then out of that, out of passion for the business and using discipline comes expertise. You become an expert. I think the best way to have a successful career in our business is to differentiate yourself from everybody else that's trying to do what you do. You differentiate yourself by being a specialist, by being an expert. And so pick one thing, pick a thing that's small enough that you can be a total expert at it, but big enough you can make a good living doing it. And I often use the analogy that let's say you go out for a run and you rip the ACL in your knee, and you go see two doctors. First doctor said, oh, knee ACL, no problem. I've done a ton of knees. I do ankles, hips, elbows, shoulders, wrists, I got you covered. And you go see the next doctor, and the doctor says, oh, knee ACL, no problem. I only do knee surgery. I've done over 14,000. Where are you getting your knee surgery? Generalists get considered, but specialists get hired. Generalists get considered, specialists get hired. Be a specialist at something. And I think those are the three things. If you love the business and you're able to use discipline well and you become an expert, there is no way you will not be successful in this business.
For sure. Talking about being a specialist, you obviously focus on New York City. What makes New York City so special to you?
Well, I've always loved the city. I think the city is great, and I give this speech a lot. I've thought a lot about expertise and what makes the difference between a good broker and a great broker. Even if you read, there's a great book, and I have a suggested reading list. If you go to bobnackle.com, I have a suggested reading list, and one of the books on there is Good to Great by Jim Collins. And the thesis of Collins' book is that the main difference between good companies and great companies is the great company figures out what they can do better than anybody else in the world. And every decision they make, they have that position in mind. Whether they get Coke or ginger ale in the kitchen, they think about, hey, is it going to help us get to the point we want to get to? And so the level of specialization you have, I think, is very, very important. And for 40 years, my value proposition was, hey, we only sell buildings, we only represent sellers, we only work on exclusives, only work in New York. And that was a very narrow value proposition, but the first leg of those four, we were generalists. We sold all kinds of buildings. So in this iteration of my career at BKREA, we further specialized that first leg, and we only sell vacant buildings in New York. So what do you do with a vacant building in New York? One of only three things. You knock it down and build something new, you renovate it and convert the use from one use to another, or you sell it to a user that's going to occupy it for their own business. So we have really, really focused, and the quality, talk about expertise, the quality of information we have in here is unbelievable. And that map started from walking around 220 hours in the field during COVID to track what was in the development pipeline. We have a land index that we put together that studies all 2,489 development site sales occurring in Manhattan south of 96th Street going back to 1984. We disaggregated into rental land, condo land, hotel, office, and miscellaneous. We've applied AI models to that data with comparing the fluctuations in value to 33 macroeconomic factors: interest rates, inflation, lending rates, price of gold, price of oil, S&P 500, Dow Jones Industrial Average, consumer sentiment, everything. And so we have gathered information that is unparalleled in the market. And so we can tell you, if you have a corner development site as opposed to a mid-block development site, you're going to get a 16.6% premium on your value. And condo land has the biggest corner premium, and if you're building a hotel, there's zero premium for being on a corner versus mid-block. Nobody else in town has that information. We're a little popcorn stand of 20 people. You have companies that spend $10 million a month on research that don't know that. So over the course of my career, and this highlights how valuable expertise is, I've done about 10,000 listing pitches in my career. I've won about 26% of them. In this room, we just gave our 100th pitch. We've gotten 98 exclusive listings. It's because of the expertise that's on that table and in the minds of everybody in this office. That's how valuable and important expertise is.
For sure. And one quote that I learned from you is it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And obviously you started social media later in your career. How has social media helped you become more known and help you get more business?
No, social media is great. I mean, we used to focus on doing mail, hard mail, to get out there and get known. And before email became popular, we were doing 3 million pieces of mail a year. So think about what the printing cost was. Think about what the postage cost was. But that was a great way to get known. And today, social media is such a great way to do that. And I'm telling you, it is happening more and more every day. I've gotten 8 deals now from people who didn't know me that said, hey, AI told me to call you. That's crazy, crazy. They go to Perplexity AI, put in who's the best development site broker in New York. The first 3 pages, my name's on there 40 times, right? You can't replace that. And so I think it's a great way to get out there, to become known. Why is it important to be known? Look, I make a bunch of calls, right? I prospect all the time. My goal is to talk to 100 property owners every week. There are 275,000 people that own the 176,000 investment properties in New York City. I make a lot of calls. I can't call 275,000 people. So I need people to call me. So taking advantage of things like social media, where you can do one post and get 100,000 impressions, that's pretty powerful. So I think it's a great part of a mosaic of market presence that involves a lot of different things, but social media is a big part of it.
For sure. And how about networking events? You go to, every single working night of the year you go to networking events?
My goal every year is to attend 261 networking events, because there are 261 working days a year. Last year I went to 289. So I think that's a big part, but market presence is making your calls. Calls, number 1 revenue generating activity for a broker, making your prospecting calls. But make your calls, send out email blasts, send out text blasts, create hard mail and do hard mail. It's very underrated and has a good shelf life. Create content, speak in public, go to networking events, be on social media. All of this stuff gets you out there so people know who you are.
For sure. And what's one last message you could give to everyone in this room on something actual that they can get started tomorrow for their career?
I think just figure out what you want to be the best in the world at, and do everything. Prospecting is not about having a list of 275,000 people and randomly calling people. It's pick 1,000 people and call them over and over and over and over again. And I love to use as an example Harry MacLeod. A lot of you guys probably know who Harry is. Big developer here in New York. I cold called the guy for 2.5 years, never took my call. Every month I called him for 2.5 years. I called him at his office one night about 7 o'clock. His assistant had gone home. Like, hey, Mr. MacLeod, Bob Kankal from Coldwell Banker. But I'd like to tell you, yeah, Bob, you leave messages to me all the time. What do you want? Right? And now he's been a client for a long. We've done 23 deals together for about $350 million. My wife and I go out and have dinner with him and his wife. Great friends. But I always say, who's the better client? You're making your calls, and you call somebody you've never spoken to, you get them on the line, you pick up, you talk to them for 20 minutes, have a great conversation. And the next person you call, they hang up on you or won't pick up. Who's the better prospect?
One that doesn't pick up.
Why?
Most people have quit on them.
Because if you call somebody that you don't know and they don't know you and they talk to you for 20 minutes, they must be bored. Or they're talking to everybody. So they get 10 calls that day, they're talking to 10 people for 20 minutes. You're just another schlub that talks to them for 20 minutes. You have somebody who doesn't pick up the phone and you keep hammering, finally get them on the phone, they're not taking anybody's call. So absolutely, Bruce, you're right. It's the person you can't get on the phone that you have to keep calling. Those are the best prospects out there because they're not talking to everybody.
There you go. Everybody clap it up for Bob.
cards. If anybody didn't get one and wants one, come on over. I'm happy to sign them up for you.
Signing baseball cards and